Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. What a blessing. It's such an honor. Let me just say this to be with you. And I want to thank the team at AM 950 Radio for allowing this show to be on the platform. And whether you agree or disagree with the opinions here with me, I want to thank you for lending me and all of us your ear, really. Because it can kind of, what I seek to do is give you information, and if you're not challenged, you're not growing. I remember when I was really in the beginning of my teenage years, my father's been, or like Reverend Dr. Wilson can attest to the fact that my dad is a real great girl dad. And he would pull me aside, and if he felt that I was struggling with something, he was on the road 5 or 6 days a week. He would take me on the road, Jonah, and we would, for a weekend. And it became more difficult as I got a little older because you're taking piano lessons, ballet, and all this other stuff. He's like, no, Daddy wants to see you. And of course, during the season when he'd be delivering college addresses, I always went with him. So, like, for about 2 months, I was on the road with him like every weekend. But he talked to me about growing pains. He said, honey, I know this might sound paradoxical, but if you're not in pain, you're not growing. If you're not, he said, because birth is painful. He said, but there's nothing more beautiful than having your child. And you give birth to ideas. And that's what we want, to shake things up, because things are being shaken up for all of us. And I think that if we just stay stuck in our old thinking, we won't be able to pivot, adjust, and really continue to make this American experiment what it is supposed to be. It's an evolving concept, everybody. If you really, really look at it, America is designed to evolve. And so let's make that happen. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. This is the Santita Jackson Show, and we are streaming on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Robert, hey, Andre, hey, Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. Please, everybody, like, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. I've been told that will help us. It helps the algorithm. So I need all of you who are looking today. Please like us, like and subscribe on YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show channel. But everybody, please like the show and pass it along to at least one person. Please do that right away, right now. Please, everybody, like the show, like the show. Andre, Robert, Shirley, everybody who's watching. Like the show. And we're streaming on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. That's the only page where I can accept friends. And so let's get to it. We are days away from the Rainbow Push International Conference, and that will end. And then the Democratic National Committee convention will meet. Now, we are not an adjunct of the Democratic Party. Let me just establish that. That is not what we do. We are independent politically, although Reverend has reshaped not just the Democratic Party, he's reshaped American politics, quite frankly. The fact is, we are home to people who want to be engaged and who want to move us toward a more perfect society and a more peaceful world. Wasn't that the mission statement of the campaign, Reverend Dr. Wilson? So let's get to it as we talk about what the issues are that are driving this election cycle. That's really what this is about. As simple as that. What issues matter most to you? Hey, Robert, what issues matter most to you? Are you a single issue voter? Are you undecided? We need to talk about that. I mean, like right now, we need to talk about that. So let's get right to it. Reverend Dr. Wilson, we have got Reverend Dr. William Barber coming in, Senator Bernie Sanders, former Senator Nina Turner. We've got Judge Greg Mathis. We got Reverend Al Sharpton. Oh my goodness! And Representative Ilhan Omar, and The Nation magazine will be honoring Reverend Jackson and his presidential candidacies, but his more than 60 years of ministry. And we're all going to be at Rainbow Push at 930 East 50th Street. And why don't you just give us a brief overview of what the convention is about and why we're meeting?
Well, the convention is about people like Jonah and Camilla who have issues, who have a platform in their heads. They've been working on some issues, and it hasn't gotten the kind of lift that it needs. And so our convention is the people's agenda. What is it that we're fighting for? Why are you going to vote anyway in November? Well, you're going to vote for education, and you're going to look at the different issues about education. We have one of the women that owns the Milwaukee Bucks. You know her. She's out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She owns a part of the Milwaukee Bucks.
And I got a chance to hold the championship ring. And I want you to know
That's what I'm.
it's as big as a dinner platter.
She's going to be there this Thursday. She's going to open up the Education Day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're excited. I want everybody that's ever watched the Milwaukee Bucks, you want to come and see the lady that owns a piece of the Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah. She doesn't just play on the floor. She owns the floor. Also, we're going to have, fun on Thursday for kids, get back, ready to go back to school. We're going to showcase the books that have been banned. We're going to give kids banned books. We want parents and children to read the books that they don't want us to read, so you know our history that they don't want us to know. And then Friday is women. We got Fannie Willis is coming.
Fannie.
I'm sorry.
Fannie.
Coming from Georgia.
You're thinking Fannie Lou Hamer. I get it.
I am. But we got Fannie Willis will be there. Leah Daltrey, Bishop Leah Daltrey is going to be there Saturday morning talking about what it is we are voting for. And so I know, Jonah, you got to be in the house because we're shaping the agenda. Everybody says, well, whoever wins, how will we know what they're going to do? We're going to keep them close to our agenda. It's the people's agenda. It's not Black people only. It's all people. We're going to look at the crisis around the world. There's violence on every continent where we exist. And so people are fighting about what's happening in Gaza. We want a ceasefire. I've noticed that the vice president has been very forceful lately about what's happening in Gaza. We're going to talk about Africa. We're going to talk about Haiti. It is a crime against the world that Haiti is languishing and struggling, and we're not investing in the country that gave us freedom, as Reverend Jackson would say. They made us free, and we're allowing them to suffer. So we're going to be talking about what is our policy towards Haiti? What is our policy towards education? Women. We're talking about our policies. What's important to women? Is it just reproductive rights? Is it health care more broadly? Is it right? Is it fair pay, equal pay for equal work? All of that.
Yeah, that part. Well, because you're one of the few women in the country who actually is the pastor of a church. But let us not sleep on Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson. She's a lawyer. She's a pastor. She's a theologian. She's an educator, and someone who, quite frankly, could be in retirement now. But that's not what she chooses to do. She chooses to give us a full measure of her devotion, and for that we are grateful. And so we're not going to let you retire. And that's the end of that. Thank you, Robert. You said I have a nice look today.
Well, thank you, Santita.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me have that moment. Love you, darling.
You can't keep kissing Robert. I can't see Robert.
Well, I'm kissing Andre and I'm giving Shirley.
They need to show up on Thursday so I can see them. I want to know who you're looking at.
Well, you know what? And you know what we want to do is make space for you, Jonah, or someone you would designate from, if not now, to speak. Because people need to hear you. We've been talking about the young people who have been leading the charge on Gaza.
Yes.
But we want you to speak to our audience. And so we're going to speak with you a little bit later, just after the show, because we want to weave you in. And I know everything's been evolving, but that's the way the convention has been. It's just been evolving because please, 4 or 5 weeks ago, we didn't have Kamala Harris as the nominee. Who knew this was going to happen? So that's what's happening with our convention. Camila, Good Kids Mad City, Dr. LaShawn Latrice. We're going to make some noise, and we want you all there. And we want you to have slots where you speak to people, because these women also are fighting for our children. I mean, and they are also, they have another view of this nomination, and they're not being heard. And we want you, Camila Williams and Dr. LaShawn Latrice. We want you to be heard. We want you to be heard. So we're going to be talking with you after the show, because we need to weave you into the convention. Can I get an amen? You know, I'm a church girl.
Amen, amen, amen.
Camila, y'all, would you all unmute yourself, please?
Amen.
I mean, wow. Okay. But Reverend Dr. Wilson, before you go, because I know you're about to be on TV.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'll see you in the morning, because we're just going to continue to push this out. And again, thank you so much for your service.
Thank you for opening up this broadcast for us. We appreciate it. I have met so many wonderful people. I met Jonah. I met Camilla, even though she's not on camera. I meet so many good people. and we thank you for the opportunity. Have a
Well,
great day.
this is your platform. I love you. There you go. Hey, everybody, I want you to go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, please like the show, and let everybody know that you're watching. Let everybody know that you're watching. Hey, Joyce, how you doing? Oh, you all were just sweet to me this morning. I don't know what I did. The makeup just settled right, Camilla and Dr. Patrice. Look, Jonah has no idea what I'm talking about. But that's okay. So, let's get right to it. And ladies, because he's the only gentleman here, we're gonna toss it to him first. The issues or the issue that's driving you to vote in this campaign, because some months ago we said that the political sands in all likelihood would shift. And they have. And many people who might have been disinclined to vote for the Democratic ticket, certainly at the top, because of the intransigence of President Biden, maybe that might change. I don't know. And I want to hear from you, because now you see that once the alarm was sounded about uh, Governor Josh Shapiro, who's had some hardline stances, not just on Gaza, but on the students. He's been he's clamped down on the students. It's really been, he's taken a hard right on that. I don't care what you heard in his speech last week. He's really been very, I would say, repressive. But because of the pressure from from the progressives, they made a shift. Because if you looked at that, Dr. Latrice and Ms. Williams, if you looked at that announcement, it was very clear they had paved the road for him. And a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. That's not a movie you would remember, Jonah. I don't even know if Dr. Latrice or Camilla Williams. Yeah, well, okay, it's from 1,000 years ago. There was movement. And so tell me, the issues. Where do you see the campaign now? Are you inclined? What are you inclined to do at the top of the ticket? Because we've been talking about voting down ballot, because that's very important. But what about at the top?
Well, here's where I think that Kamala Harris gives me hope in a way that potentially, and I say this with hesitance on this intractable issue that we've seen in the Democratic Party of Israel-Palestine. But I believe that Kamala Harris is a politician who is a politician with a capital P, meaning that she wants to take the path of least resistance on many issues, represent what is seen as the will of the party. And if a movement pushes for something, and if the interests are aligned in her constituencies such that she can take a position, she'll do it. And I think we saw that right away, where she felt the pressure from the uncommitted movement, from the pro-Palestinian movement that has been out in the streets for months, just calling for an end to the U.S.-backed genocide in Gaza, an end, if not to the genocide itself, to at least our funding of it, to our sending the bombs that are being dropped on, most recently, a school in Gaza, killing 40 people. It's unacceptable. It's been going on for far too long, and people are not going to stop looking at it. And I think Kamala Harris understands that. I don't know what that will translate to in policy, but she understands that is a block of voters in the Democratic Party that is incensed and experiencing real pain and anger, and might vote on the issue of Gaza. And so we saw, first with her pick for vice president. I'm sure there were many factors that went into it, but it's also true that Governor Shapiro had taken some extreme rhetorical and policy positions in his past on the issue of Israel-Palestine, and the pro-Palestinian movement made clear that that was not going to fly for us. And I don't know if that was the only factor, but she did not end up choosing Governor Shapiro in spite of him being the favorite at the beginning. And so that's a win for the movement. She, prior to last week's rally, had a brief conversation with members of the uncommitted movement, said she'd like to meet with them. And then there were moments that weren't great. She had an advisor put out a statement saying that she does not support what is the central demand of our movement right now, which is not another bomb, an arms embargo to Israel. Her advisor said she does not support that right now. She also
So when she says that, what does that uh, what does that signal to you? I mean, how does that make you more? Because you said, I guess you said at the top, you have reservations.
well, I think a lot of people in the movement have reservations about whether Kamala Harris, how far she's able to go. I think there's an understanding among the group that I'm in, if not now Chicago, group of American Jews, that a man who says that Jews who vote for Democrats are disloyal and who said that there were very fine people at Charlottesville is not a friend of the Jewish people. Is a fascist who represents a real threat to the country. I don't want to minimize that, and so I think there is an imperative to defeat Donald Trump, and I think Kamala Harris is the candidate that is best positioned to do that in a two-party system. But at the same time, we also know we are voters, and we know many voters who care about the issue of Gaza. And if she wants to win, we really believe that she needs to engage those voters. We
Mm.
understand that she remains the vice president to Joe Biden, and that breaking with him publicly while he's still the president carries with it a measure of political risk. But we also cannot accept and will not accept a U.S. policy that violates international law, that funds genocide in Gaza, that goes against the values of never again for anyone. Many of our people uh, in our movement are descendants of survivors of the Holocaust, and the lesson that we have drawn is not that it should be never again for the Jewish people. It's that it's never again for anyone, and we see, unfortunately, a genocide perpetrated by Jews against Palestinians right now, by the government of Israel against Palestinians. Um, and we have a duty to call it out, and we have a duty as Americans to demand that our country not fund it. And so uh, I don't know how far Vice President Harris will go during the campaign. There's certainly signs that she's been more sympathetic to the movement, but our North Star is not just changes in rhetoric. It's not just more outward sympathy. While we appreciate that, it's not enough. What is enough is what we know it takes to actually stop the killing, which is committing to not sending weapons to the government of Israel. And that's what we're looking for with the vice president. And I know that there are many voters that are looking for that as well.
Well, I hasten to add that your critique does not mean that you're not supportive of her. The thing is, uncritical support does not help anybody. Doesn't help you to grow. Remember, she'd be out of the presidency longer than she'd be in it, and we would be electing her, selecting her, putting her in, installing her in a job to do some things that we need her to do. You don't know how this conflict and America's support of it in the Middle East has made us look internationally. We have lost so much currency, so much respect, beyond the fact that the Lancet study says that almost 200,000 people have been killed. They said that 4 weeks ago. They project 500,000 people will be killed by this. This is unacceptable. We want some answers on Haiti. And all these things, people might say this is such a tall order. Well, you know what? Before I get to you, Dr. Gibbs, it is a tall order, but it's a big job, and she's a big woman who can handle it, which is why she has my support, quite frankly. Camila Williams, what are you hearing? I mean, good kids, bad city. You are talking to people everywhere. Um,
Wow.
what what
Wow.
what are you hearing? What are you
So,
hearing? And I want you to be perfectly candid because you know you have the space here to do that.
oh, I'm going to be very candid. So, thank you for this opportunity. First, I would like to say is that the people, we do have power. The last I was on the show, we were against Shapiro, and she didn't pick him. So
Mhm.
she heard the people. But I will say, I'm still hearing a lot of people not in full support of her and very skeptical. I am one of those people that are still skeptical. Why? Because I just came back from Ferguson.
Mm.
I
Missouri,
just came back
Missouri.
from Ferguson.
Right. And
Yes.
this is the 10th anniversary of
10th
the murder
anniversary. And this
of
is
Michael
not
Brown.
the first time I've been to Ferguson. I've been
Mhm.
throughout the many years in this 10 years, and I've built solid like family relationships with a lot of the families across the country, from high profile cases to cases that we don't know about. And just sitting in the presence of my grieving families and the lies that have been told, not just by the Biden administration and them meeting with VP Harris, but just the no movement of policy. But then also having a conversation with actual organizers who organized around the uprising for Mike Brown, George Floyd, Freddie Gray, right? They said people just are not hearing us. They
Mhm.
keep telling us, well, if you vote Trump, it's going to be worse. How do you tell people, how do you tell organizers who have been beaten, falsely arrested, such as myself, been at the table at the White House, continuously talk to their legislators, and in our terms, they played in our face and put it on a back burner. So when families were asked in Ferguson, who are they going to support? They admitted, yes, VP Harris' campaign reached out and asked us to join. But we were adamant how they played and insulted us in our face in 2020 and haven't given us anything. And we're still here today begging and seeing a lack of justice. So for me, I am a single voter. I mean, a single issue voter, which is policing, because tonight I have to go to Oak Forest police station to demand the firing of an officer who came from Dalton who murdered 4 people. And they're not giving us legislation across the country. And it's okay to be upset about it because I'm upset about it. I believe when VP Harris is told that a lot of these families are not going to get behind her, she may bring them back to the table and she may start talking about it. Who knows? But we're going to continue to push.
But that's the only way that you get anything done. Indeed. I want you to continue to everybody like the show. Velma, Regina, Dave. Hey, how you doing, sweeties? Everybody like the show. We got to Eric. We got to get our algorithms up out there in LA. We'll be out there pretty soon.
And I
Bernadette,
want to say
Joyce.
this: we're
Yes, of course.
when it comes to the momentum, I see the excitement of having the first woman president, specifically black woman president,
Mhm.
right? But people need to stop bullying people. People need to actually hear what people are saying and not get caught up in, oh, she's a divine nine. She's a beautiful black queen. She stood on the shoulders of Rosa Parks and Ruby Bridges. Okay, can we talk about policies that's affecting us? And I'm glad you guys are mentioning Haiti because I've been following that for a year. And not only have I been following Haiti, but I've been following the movement of the young people in Kenya.
Hmm.
And I've been talking to congressional members, sending them on their personal phones articles saying, are you guys serious? The Black Caucus members, y'all use us for y'all blackness when it's convenient. Y'all want to kneel, put your hands around your neck, put your hands up. The only one that stood solid as a congressional member for 10 years was Cori Bush, and we seen what happened to her. And her and I had a conversation in Ferguson again because we was on the front line together before she was elected, and she openly said it. They don't want police accountability.
Hmm.
I said, well, we might have to take it again, sister. We might have to take it.
And I'm gonna tell you this with Cori Bush, what you have to do. One of the lessons we learned from Reverend Jesse Jackson's campaigns, the the supporters that she needs are not going to be in the party. The supporters that she needs are out in these streets. So we have to register people to vote and push and help them to understand what they have to do after they vote. Your vote is the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end. That's
And
when
to say this,
the engagement starts. Yes.
they did have a huge voters registration drive down in Ferguson.
Hmm.
They did talk about the history of voting. They had youth engagement. They had healing. So people are actually registering people to vote. They're talking about voting. But
Right.
the issue is we're not having a collective conversation on what we can fix. Is that this is our beautiful black queen and we gonna take her. If you criticize her, you automatically for Trump.
And you know what? And you know what? And you got to stop people from saying that. But also remember the voter registration is a 365,
Yes.
24/7 project. But you're right. The censorship, we have to stop. Before I get to you, Dr. Latrice, I'd like for you to speak to that, Dr. Gibbs, because something has happened in this moment. Interestingly enough, the Democrats, it's like everything's flipped. Democrats are supporting war. The
Yep.
Democrats are supporting censorship.
Mhm.
You cannot engage in loving criticism of anybody.
That's right.
And it's dangerous. I
Mhm.
mean, I remember when President Obama, well, then Senator Obama was running the first time. One of my girlfriends, may she rest in peace, we were talking about her going to an event, and she had her reservations about President Obama, but she went, and she expressed some reservations with one of her classmates from Yale. And she said, "Do you know this girl that, if you don't support him completely, we're going to deal with you?" I said, "Eek." Ooh, I said, "Yeah, well, something, and we've got." I see you nodding your head in a sense, Josh. Because this is very real, and we got to talk about that.
I think that one of the things we are seeing something of a realignment of U.S. politics, and the Democratic Party has acquired some characteristics that have traditionally been associated with the right, including on the very far right. Most notably McCarthyism. There's really been an extraordinary revival of McCarthyism in the Democratic Party, more than the Republican Party. The constant accusation of you're doing Russia's bidding, sometime Iran's bidding or Hamas's bidding, but mostly, especially Russia's bidding. Any kind of dissent is dealt with by the claim that you're an agent of Russia. When I first started hearing that in the 2016 election, I couldn't believe anybody would take it seriously. But it seems to become deeply embedded into the Democratic Party. And that is a very deeply authoritarian tendency that, again, has traditionally been associated with the extreme right of the Republican Party, people like J. Edgar Hoover and Joseph McCarthy. We're seeing a total revival of that now in the Democratic Party. That's new. That's a new thing. Also, the Democratic Party has become very closely aligned with the intelligence services, notably the CIA and the FBI. Again, if you look at the records of the CIA and the FBI, some might find that a disturbing tendency.
So what do you mean by that? What do you mean they've become aligned with?
Well,
FBI?
When Trump basically, for example, again, I assure you, I'm not in any way a sympathizer or supporter with Trump, but there was when he was meeting with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki, which is a normal thing to do in diplomacy, to meet with foreign leaders and to have cordial talks with them. Nixon did
Yes,
that all the time.
President Obama met with Putin.
With Putin.
Yeah.
The allegation was made that he's disregarding the U.S. intelligence services. The intelligence services are saying all these negative things. Putin, specifically, what happened was that Trump said he doesn't believe the CIA's claim that the Russians had interfered in the 2016 election, and people were outraged that he wouldn't believe Democrats, were accusing him of taking Putin's word over the CIA's word. With the implication that the CIA is a reliable source of information. Many of the leaks, basically, including against Bernie Sanders, by the way, people imagine this is only going to be done against Donald Trump, but Bernie Sanders was subjected to this as well after the Nevada primary. There was an intelligence leak to the Washington Post that, quote unquote, the Russians are backing Bernie Sanders with no evidence, mind you, with no evidence. The Democratic Party does seem to be, if you look at the public opinion polls, Democratic voters have much higher positive opinions of the CIA and the FBI than Republicans these days. Again, that's new. That's new. And I guess the question is, how comfortable are people being aligned with the CIA and the FBI? How comfortable are people being aligned with McCarthyism? Because it is, in fact, what is going on here. Obviously, people have to decide for themselves how they want to vote. I'm not interested in, arguing to vote one way or the other. That's for individuals to decide, and there are all sorts of issues to be decided. But I think one of the things that's been underrated here is the very deep authoritarian tendencies that have emerged in the Democratic Party of late. I think that needs more discussion. That needs more consideration. That's not to deny, of course, there are other authoritarian tendencies equally disturbing from the Republicans, most notably in Trumpism. We've seen them on January 6th and so on. And that is disturbing. And by the way, against something I've mentioned on the show before, but I'll mention again, is that election denial and efforts to overturn elections are not confined to the Republican Party. In 2016, after Trump was elected, there was openly calls by the senior figures in the Democratic Party, including, I believe, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, that the CIA should give a temporary security clearance to the electors and give them a briefing on the supposedly dastardly things the Russians were doing in the United States, and that would presumably cause the electors to change their votes and swing the election to Hillary. This was seriously proposed. It wasn't done, by the way. I think even for the CIA, I think basically what they were proposing is the CIA should choose the next president. That's what they were proposing, at least that's how I read it. It was in Politico, by the way. This is not in any way, a wild accusation. It was in Politico. This was proposed, and the fact that this was proposed, could be viewed as an effort to overturn the election. I suppose it's nominally legal, in the sense I can't think of anything illegal about it. But basically, in 2000, the Supreme Court overturned the election, and that was, in my view, an outrageous act. But at least the courts are in the Constitution. I don't see any mention of the CIA in the Constitution, but that was a proposal, and it indicates something about where the Democratic Party is going, or where the Democratic Party has gone. And I think when people debate the merits of Harris versus Trump or a third party, let's not forget there are third parties out there. I think they do have to take into account this issue of authoritarianism that is in both parties, very, very much in both parties, and threats to democracy are in both parties. All right, it's not just the Republican Party. So I think that's something we should be mindful of here.
Well, and I think that we do have to have that discussion because, Jonah, that's something we're missing, and we're feeling it. I mean, thankfully, they just awarded the degrees to these 4 University of Chicago students who were in the encampments, who were protesting what's happening over in Palestine and the West Bank. But the fact that they would have to hold up, that they would have to march with insecurity is this is unbelievable. We don't, the freedom of speech. I mean, it's like we're watching the erosion of our rights, everybody, and you ought to be concerned. I don't care where it's coming from. Uh, Dr. Latrice. And of course, I remind people to get the book, The Revolt of the Rich. Go to Amazon, Dr. David Gibbs, The Revolt of the Rich. So much, Jonah, of what we're dealing with. Because see, I couldn't vote yet when President Reagan went into office, but I remember the shockwave across the progressive and Black communities and Latino communities, people who were progressive when he won, people who remembered him from the 60s and his authoritarianism, his stance against civil rights, his stance against student protesters, and on and on and on. What he did to the Black Panthers and all of that when he became president, and having opened one of his opening events was in Philadelphia, Mississippi, where they killed Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. That's the only reason it's famous. You were like, good. Who have these people elected? Okay, so we've kind of been here before, but he was an actor. But you had more freedom to criticize him than you have right now. I mean, you have no space. Dr. Latrice, your thoughts? I mean,
Yes, good
where are
morning,
you at the
everyone.
election? Thank you.
I'm kind of in the same place that I was the last time we talked. I am one of those people who I like to consider myself part of the majority of organizers, those who are fighting the voices of the voiceless, justice impacted. As a community psychologist, we often forget about the community component in these events like the DNC and the election. This weekend, I had the opportunity to march in the parade with my sister, Cassandra Greer. And
You
we
mean
also
Bud
we
Billiken?
marched. Yes, we were in the
For
Bud
everybody
Billiken
who's not
parade.
from Chicago, and we have a good many people, this is the largest African American children's parade in the country, and it's been going on for decades. Yes, please continue.
Yes. And it was awesome. We marched first with Shay Rhymefest as he's running for District 10. Then we went back and we marched again from the very beginning with the DNC. And I had a chance to talk to someone who was, I guess she was very key in planning the DNC. I marched with her for blocks before I knew who she was, and we just started talking. And she understood what I was saying. I said to her, it feels like there is a group of people that are intentionally being dismissed or left out of this equation of what the DNC is, what it stands for. It almost feels like there's a level of bullying, if I can just be candid. And what I mean by that is it's almost like you got to get with the program, or nobody's going to really care about what you're saying. And me, as a person that represents a population of people that people don't often want to hear, those who are impacted by incarceration. I also represent a group of people who are in the organizing world, as I've been out there with Camilla for years, and I'll be with her at the police station tonight. There are just so many issues that keep getting pushed to the side. So my concern is, I don't want to just get galvanized just because we're happy because there's history being made. I want to be galvanized because there are actually changes pushing forth, and people don't look like flip-floppers and people who just come out and say, okay, I'm going to support her just because I'm against Trump. Okay, but what about holding people accountable for what they've been attached to? What about the things that people are saying they need right now? Look at our communities. Look at the state of the world right now. We really are in a very frivolous part right now. Everything's all over the place. So right now, I'm not encouraged about representing the community. And the woman said to me, I can't remember her name, but she said, we're trying to make a space that is inclusive of the diversity is represented in the communities. And I told her, I said, people are feeling left out. They're feeling like, I'm not going to vote because my vote doesn't count anyway. They're going to put in who they want to. What about the Electoral College? I mean, I've been hit with so many questions. And I'm like, I'm one of those people who, I am an avid voter. I would never let an election pass without voting. I was just always like that. I was taught as a young girl to hold that right very close and dear to me. So I have. I used to round up people, drive to people's houses, pick them up, take them to the polls. And this is at 16, 17, 18, because I couldn't vote. I wanted to wait till I get in there. But I felt like my vote really counted. I felt like people died for the right for us to vote. But we're at the point now where the excitement doesn't matriculate to voting. People don't come out to the polls because they've watched elections in the past, or they think this is not as important as the last thing, or why are we just only excited about this piece right here? What about the judges that get elected? What about the key offices that get elected that nobody ever talks about? This is a major disservice to our community.
Well, Dr. Gibbs, and see, when you hear Jonah Cars from If Not Now Chicago, when you hear Camila Williams from Good Kids Bad City, when you hear, I love I love the fact that you want to make some noise, Dr. Latrice. I love that. I love it. That's just genius. When you hear, these are people who we don't see in corporate media, and when they come to events, as you're hearing from Camila Williams, as you're hearing from Dr. LaShawn Latrice, they're shut down. And, and I'm all about making history, but I'm more than that, I'm about making a difference. Black faces in high places are not going to save us, everybody. It's just, that's not going to happen. No more than having someone who's Jewish, all this, the identity politics it hits a wall, Jonah. You have to it's not about your phenotype, it's about your philosophy. So where you want this country and humanity to go. So, I can't go toward a conserving what? Black person and go past Dennis Kucinich, who lived in a car with 8 or 9 siblings and his mother and daddy and remembers it. And his politics reflects that. He lost the being mayor of Cleveland over fighting for the poor. And he ran for president and walked away from his congressional seat doing the same thing. I can get with that. I can't get with someone who's going to compromise their way out of, Camila Williams and Dr. LaShawn Latrice, they are dealing with the families of people who have been killed by the police, who've been killed on these streets. You cannot, I appreciate lawyers getting settlements, but you can't, no money is going to replace your loved one who will not be there for Christmas, won't be there for Thanksgiving, won't be there when you call them. So where are we in this moment? I mean, just kind of give us a 30,000 foot view and take us down into the weeds, Dr. Gibbs.
Well, one of the things I think that we have to be clear about is that to really, it's very hard for me to imagine that Kamala Harris's position on Gaza and Israel will be any different from that of Joseph Biden. I mean, we're seeing some rhetorical changes because there's an election going on and she's under pressure. But what she has to do, which she's not going to do, I mean, I can't imagine she would do, is to insist the U.S. cut off its aid to Israel. Okay, if the U.S. were simply to end its aid to Israel, which it should have done a long time ago, it was never justified. If that would have happened, the war would end, or it's highly likely the war would end. Israel would not be able to do what it is doing now without the U.S. backstopping it at every turn. I mean, Netanyahu's whole strategy, I suspect, is to bring the United States directly into the war, more directly, with maybe its own forces directly involved on Israel's side. I think that is his strategy. He may well get it if there's, let's say, a direct war between Israel and Iran, for example, which is possible. The U.S. could become directly involved. There seems to be nothing to stop this train. There's no brakes on the train here, which I find very disturbing. And I don't see anything in Harris's background or in her current positions to suggest that she will modify that at all, even one scintilla. And the only thing that will work is, unfortunately, is basically to have the option of not voting for her. She knows very well that most of the people who are demonstrating, AOC, on the one hand, she said that, Biden was Genocide Joe. He was committing genocide, but she's supporting him to the hilt. I assume she said or will say similar things about Kamala Harris. I don't think one can have it both ways. If one wants to exert pressure on these people, one has to have the credible option of not voting for them, or they simply won't take you seriously. That's the way politics works. And when I see somebody saying I'm doing pro-Trump rhetoric, I don't see it that way myself. In my view, there's another option of saying neither side here is up to the task, and there are third parties you can vote for. I, for one, favor Cornel West. Others can make their own decisions on these things. But you can't credibly say I'm going to pressure Kamala Harris, but I'm voting for her no matter what. If I were her, I would not take that seriously, and I'm sure she's not taking that seriously. Basically, the only way you get any credibility with these people is to say, I'm not voting for you if you don't do this. All right, then they might take you seriously, and that's the only way to do it. So I think people's obsession with Trump, which is legitimate up to a point, I think ignores, as I said, some of the very disturbing tendencies we're seeing in the Democratic Party with regard to Gaza, with regard to Ukraine, with regard to the whole issue of censorship and intimidation, and its alliance with the intelligence services, which I mentioned. All of these things basically do raise questions in my mind as to whether or not really either candidate deserves support in this election.
Well, let me go around and let me ask everybody because, Dr. Latrice, Arlene, we're listening to you and we're listening to everyone. When you take the position that you've taken, which is not, it's your opinion. They're saying she said enough already of the pro-Trump rhetoric. What do you say to that, Dr. Latrice?
I don't know if I pay attention to the rhetoric or what they call rhetoric, because everything seems to be shaped a certain way from the media that they want people to believe or think. And one thing I think they're not paying attention to is there is a large group of people that are saying they're not going to vote. I've heard it from the young people to people my age. I've heard it from the people who are in academia on down to those who are organizing. People feel very discouraged about their options, and often in the world that we live in, we look at what's not being said. We look at why the attention is being shifted a certain way. because they want the political rhetoric to look like this. That doesn't bother us. We know who Trump is. We know what we're dealing with. That right there doesn't bother us at all. And it doesn't make me want to cast my vote for him. But what I'm saying is right now, we need to know that people are going to understand what changes that they may see that they hold dear to their heart. And I think that the voices are being silenced by all of this excitement behind the fact that, oh, it's a first female president, the first Divine Nine, like Camilla said. She's a beautiful Black woman. We can't take any of that away from her. She's educated. But there are some serious issues attached with her legacy. And I think that people need to see changes happening prior to. Me personally, I think they waited too close to the election to do all these changes. And I don't think it allows people the opportunity to see a person for who they really are. I think this is kind of like a bum rush that has happened. And I think some kind of political maneuvering has been intentionally done. But I think the timing of it is off balance.
And I think everybody needs to listen to that because, Dr. Gibbs, this is what people are saying. People are saying this. Now, I know when you see the pundits on CNN, MSNBC, Fox, well, Fox will give you a little bit more space. And that's not just because I've been on Fox. It's just, we are shutting down conversation, and that is not a good thing. You can win an election. You can win the battle and lose the war. We have been litigating 2020 for 4 years, everybody. Nothing has changed. So you know what? Stay right there. Jonah, what do you hear when people are saying, Arlene said, enough of the Trump rhetoric, Project 2025, we must vote blue. But what about people being killed? What about Sonia Massey? What about her? We've been trying to get police reform. There are more people who've been killed by the police since George Floyd than before George Floyd. What about that? What about those families? Do you not care about that? I mean, there's a whole lot going on here. Jonah.
Well, I think you said it. You got it 100% right. And I think this is why, while voting is important, and I will be voting, and I hope everyone else does as well, it does not stop there. A presidential election does not it does not by itself, whether Donald Trump wins or Kamala Harris wins, that doesn't mean there's justice for Sonia Massey. That doesn't mean there's justice for George Floyd. That doesn't mean that the racial wealth gap is eliminated and that Black America has justice and is not oppressed by the police in a way that I did not grow up with in a predominantly white community. It's wrong. It's unfair. It's unjust, and it's baked into the fabric of the history of this country. And one presidential election is not going to change that. And that doesn't mean we don't vote. That doesn't mean we don't necessarily understand the contrast between candidates, understand how a vote can reduce harm, understand that fascism will bring us backwards, which is at least how I view it. But it is imperative that wherever our votes go, it does not stop there. Change comes from the bottom up. Change comes from movements, and the presidential candidates that are put forward are a reflection of how well organized our movements are. A Kamala Harris, for all her flaws, might have been seen in 2004, for example, would have been seen as far too liberal, far too progressive to be the nominee of the Democratic Party. So the fact that she is the nominee today is a reflection not of anything particularly special about her, although she has a lot of very impressive qualifications. And it is historic that she could be the first Black woman president. I do not discount that, but it's also a reflection of movements that have pushed to move the party to the left. And that has to continue. It has to go beyond the politics of Kamala Harris. It has to go to the politics of movements. And the only way to get there is through solidarity on the ground. And that's how political change happens.
We have to continue to push. You cannot stop. I mean, because we have got President Obama was middle of the road. He was not a progressive. He was sold that way. What was progressive was that he was Black and that white people were going to vote for a Black person. That's it. And if you mischaracterize someone's politics, then you don't know how to fight them. I didn't say hurt them. I mean, let me put it this way, advocate for your position. So, I mean, let's make some history and advocate for people. Why don't we do that? Yeah, that's what you do, and make people work for you. And think of this. Michael Brown was a young white man in Wisconsin. He was 21 years of age. Father was a decorated veteran. Um, he was pulled over in front of his home, and I've had his father on my show several times. I'm going to have him back. He was pulled over in front of his home by the police. He said, "Hey, I know my rights. What are you all doing? I'm home." Well, why are you pulling me over? He got into an argument with the police, but he kept his phone running. Do you know the police blew his brains out in front of his mother and sister? His mother and sister ran out the house to see what was going on. The police officer put the gun to his head. It misfired because the gun is not designed to fire that close. He then moved the gun back while his mama and sister were watching and killed him. It happens to black and brown people right now, but a police state is a police state, and nobody is safe. Believe that. Black America has pneumonia, white folks get a cold. I might die first, but you're coming too. Now, Reverend Jackson said we came over here on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. Now, either we're all Americans, we're going to make this thing right, or nothing's going to happen. Oh, yeah, Bob, I'm going to bring his father back on the show because his father took the settlement money. He said, I don't need your money, but I'm going to change the laws. And he has been doing that in Wisconsin. It's not black or white. This is wrong and right. Camila, I got about a minute for you, sweetie. Everybody, please continue over to the second hour. Look at the link for the second hour for the Santita Jackson show because we're going to continue this discussion. And oh yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. But that did happen, and I've had him on the show several times, and I'm gonna have him back. Camila, 1 minute for you, sweetie. What do you want people to think about?
I mean, I just want people, to also start pressuring their local elected officials as well for this issue. I mean, I'm not favorable of AG Kwame Raoul, right? With all that's going on with Sonia Massey and even Terrell Miller in Macomb, Illinois, the 4-year-old that was shot by the police. He's gun-ho on campaigning for VP Harris. That's where his attention is. With all that's going on in Dalton, Illinois right now, and been going on since 2021, the Democrats has been solely focused on everything else but what the people has been crying out about. So that's also an issue why people don't want to vote blue, is because our current leaders have failed us. They have not been a voice for us. They wait until it's election time to pop out and say, oh yeah, we're going to do something about gun violence and parade families around. Oh, when Sonia Massey was murdered, they want to give a statement. I was with our governor last Tuesday when he was asked a question about Sonia Massey, and he said he want to know how this officer was able to be hired, and he's disturbed. Well, stop it, Governor, by going to do executive order for a tracker.
Well, you know what? We're going to continue this conversation in the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show. What are the issues you're voting for? The Revolt of the Rich by Dr. David Gibbs. Please get it. I know you smile, but you know what? We're going to make it a bestseller. And I want you to tell people about it, Jonah Karsh, so that I put it in your network. Put it in your network, Camila Williams. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, put this book, The Revolt of the Rich, in your network. Everybody get it, because we need to know why we're here. If we understand why we're here, how we got here, then we can see where we're going and what's coming our way. We now have people on track to become trillionaires while we have record levels of poverty. Get the revolt of the rich, because they have been revolting and they are revolting. I'm not against people having money, but I just think that to whomever much is given, much is required. God will supply your every need, not your every greed. Sorry, you guys. The second hour of the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody switch over and like and share the show. Like and share the show. Sending you much love, Dr. David Gibbs. Jonah Karsh, I'm going to give you opening remarks on the other side. Camila Williams and Dr. LaShawn Latrice. Get on over there, girls. My girls.
Thank you.
All right. All right, everybody. Get on to the second hour. Thank you so much. Wow.